tuned in to the newest Bills Mafia production, FamBase Sports. Join Jerick and Khari demos as they take you around the world of sports. Every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. Only on the official network of the original Bills Mafia.
What is going on, sports world? Welcome back to FamBase Sports. My name is Jerick, aka Jan Sports, with my co-host Khari Damos back here again. And we're back here again, man. We're going to talk some sports. We got finals talk to talk about. We got, again, Bills channel, so we got to talk about Buffalo Bills new assistant GM Brian Gaines. So we'll get more into that information. We're also going to give you our Rookie of the Year NFL candidates, since the NFL season is closely upon us, right? We got OTAs, mini camp is about to be here very, very soon. So we got to kind of dive in. Last week, again, I talked about the NFL power rankings. This week, we'll talk about kind of our Rookie of the Year candidates. And there's a lot more stuff that we can, obviously we can get into, man. But Khari, man, how have you been, brother? And man, let's get started, man. I'm so excited to have you back because I missed you, man. I missed you last week. So, man, how you been?
I know, man. I missed you too. And, full disclosure for everybody out there, I was helping my wonderful, lovely girlfriend move, and her friends, helping them move a little bit as well. So, it was a busy time to say the least, but, I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to be joining you again and, ready to talk some ball. There's a lot going on in the sports world, some good things, some bad things, unfortunately, as well. I know we didn't really discuss it. We can probably even just save a couple comments for it at the end with the whole Deshaun Watson situation, just because it's been a whole saga at this point. But I'm ready to dive into some topics, whether it's, NBA finals, and NFL, with the season approaching as well. So.
All right, obviously, man. So obviously game 1 and game 2 was obviously extremely crazy. Game 1 was one of the weirdest games, was one of the weirdest finals I think I've ever seen, probably since the Dallas Mavericks versus Heat, when the Heat were by far the more talented team. They were, in my opinion, the better team. And then all of a sudden, we got to game 5, and everything just imploded for them with LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, with the Mavericks winning. This was a very similar situation where you got game 1 where the Warriors were dominating. I mean, these guys were shooting 49% from 3 in the first half. And in the second half, these guys were absolutely bonkers. And then we got to the fourth quarter where these guys were up by 17 points. And then they just self-imploded. And the Boston Celtics did what the Warriors normally do, and that's just go crazy from 3. I mean, these guys were hitting 88% from their jump shots, especially from 3. Al Horford was 6 for 8 for 3-point range. Marcus Smart was even hitting threes. He was 4 for 7. It was insane what we was able to watch, and the Celtics stole that game. And, if the Celtics somehow win this series, we're going to talk about game 1, very similar to Jimmy Butler, where he kind of took that crazy shot. We're going to talk about that for a long time if the Celtics ended up, pulling out the series. But then we got to game 2. Game 2 was, it was just literally just as we expected. I mean, the Warriors were just literally on a shooting rampage. Stephen Curry was absolute elite. Klay Thompson's still off to a little bit of a slow start. I'm expecting him to definitely, become a little bit better. But Jordan Poole, man, was also incredible. Probably hit one of the best threes that I think we've seen from the NBA playoffs. I mean, obviously Steph Curry's got to be proud that Jordan Poole hit that phenomenal deep 3 almost halfway from half court. And then we, again, Draymond Green, a lot, Kuminga, a lot of the other bench players. And the last time we talked, we kind of made our finals predictions. We all know the Warriors are extremely deep as far as from the shooting range. They have hard workers on the floor with Looney there as well. I thought Looney had a much better game than he did in game 1. But the Warriors dominated, plain and simple. I mean, they put their second and third string guys in the fourth quarter. So, Khari, what were your thoughts about game 1 and game 2, and what are you looking for game 3?
Yeah, I honestly have to really just, as a NBA fan, basketball fan in general, you really have to give kudos to the Warriors because, obviously, this is more of a big picture thing for them to have so much time away from this big stage. Obviously all the injuries Klay went through, Steph dealing with his ups and downs, and even Draymond Green, he had some injury issues as well. And for them to really have a mini reload and reboot, they didn't really even have to tear things down. Obviously, when you lose a guy like Kevin Durant, your team is generally not going to get better. But I mean, the Warriors in a short order really flipped this roster, and for them to be back here, it really just shows because outside of that fourth quarter in game one, I mean, the Warriors have really dominated this series. Steph Curry continues to show why he's an all-time great, and I think if he continues to put the series together that he has so far, he'll get his first Finals MVP and really will solidify himself as one of the 10 greatest players of all time. It's already stated what he is as a shooter, but I really see it's crazy to me because this matchup is so unique. I feel as though these two teams are they're such similar teams, but very different at the same time. Very similar in terms of they run really strong offensive systems. A lot of motion. Being able to lock you down defensively as well. Both teams are great defensive units, but both of their units are different just because you've got two extremely elite wing players in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Obviously all the other complementary pieces that go along with it, Al Horford, Marcus Smart, guys like Peyton Pritchard coming off the bench, Robert Williams, obviously the big fella, he's had some ups and downs with injuries, but on the flip side, you go over to the Warriors who they're really they've been a small ball team identity wise for a lot of their run, dating back to when Steve Kerr took over in 2015, or 2014. But at the same time too, they really have shown that they can evolve. Like you mentioned, Kevon Looney has really emerged as a player. I think some of the young bigs that they have, like Kuminga, and obviously James Wiseman hasn't even really played this year, so he's someone to watch out for as they look to next season and beyond. But I really think for the Warriors, they have to be feeling obviously it's unfortunate that they lost game one after how well they played, but they've also got to be confident, not only with championship experience, also just knowing that they've been a team that has really dominated most of the series. I do think that the Celtics, they might be a touch more of a talented team. They got the such athletic guys in Brown and Tatum, and Marcus Smart, obviously reigning defensive player of the year. So they've got a ton of talent, high end talent. But I think just the depth that the Warriors have, the coaching experience that they have with Steve Kerr, like I know everybody jokes around about it. Steve Kerr was picking up things for Michael Jordan back in the day, but also though too, you got to also think he is Steve Kerr legitimately has been a part of the three modern dynasties, since the 1990s. He was a player with the Bulls. He won a couple chips with the San Antonio Spurs, yep. And now he's created his own with the Warriors, and I think it just goes to show he knows how to win. His style of coaching really is unmatched. A lot of guys have left the building, and you see it a lot of times, even with, in the NFL with guys leaving New England, like, they look great in Golden State, but, when they get out of there, they're not the head guy that was running the show in Golden State. Obviously the talent that, he's been fortunate to have as well, it makes a huge difference too. But, I'm excited to see how this series transitions over to Boston. I think with the Robert Williams injury situation, this is also this is a very unique team too with Boston, where they've almost played better on the road than they have at home in the playoffs. And a team like Golden State, if you let them, gain confidence like that on the road, especially as an experienced team, that's something you don't want to play with. So, but I'm really just intrigued to see, now that the Celtics are going home, how will their role players step up? But also too, just seeing if Jason Tatum can continue on with the game that he had in game two after he had, a poor shooting performance in game one. So, just what are your thoughts, Jerick, as we head into game three?
Well, I think that game three, obviously, being, for us being Buffalo fans, we all know the Boston, Buffalo rivalry. We all know that Boston is a very hostile place. They got some, they win. You look at the Red Sox, the Celtics, the Boston Bruins. You look at all these Boston teams and the Boston fan bases. It's absolute madness, and it's extreme hostile. It's a very hostile environment when you're playing on the road in there.
Yeah.
But you said it right. I mean, the Celtics have, for some reason, they've just been more of a better road team than they are a home team. And I don't quite understand why about it. I don't know if it's just kind of, maybe a coincidence was going on there. But, the Warriors, I mean, they play extremely well at home. They're pretty good on the road, but they were made to play at home, which is why it was kind of shocking that they lost game one, because you said it before. I mean, besides the fourth quarter in game one, they've pretty much dominated the NBA finals. I mean, they have outstruck Boston, by at least 70 made threes, which is absolutely, I'm sorry, not 70 made threes, but around the 50 to 60 mark. I'm kind of close, actually, a little bit to 70 mark, but they have done a great job, just pretty much just outstriking Boston in that three department. And it's kind of weird because Boston, for some reason, maybe it worked because in game one, I mean, again, Al Horford was on fire. I mean, Marcus Smart was even hitting threes. He's not really known as a scorer. He's a great perimeter defender, kind of very similar to Draymond Green, a very, a really good perimeter defender, great leader, extremely high Q player, long rangey type of point guard, but not really more of a scorer. If anything, he's more of a slashing type of point guard, slashing defending type of guy, but not really a great 3-point shooter. So the fact that Boston attempted as many threes as they possibly could in game two, I mean, that's Golden State's philosophy. That's Golden State's philosophy to try to free up their shooters, look for opportunities to try to dominate from outside the perimeter. And that's what you really saw Boston try to do. And it just did not work out for them. So I wonder if game three, if Boston's going to say, you know what, we know we can hit threes, but we don't have great 3-point shooters. I mean, Jaylen Brown can hit it. We all know Marcus Smart, if he's on his A game, can do it. Jason Tatum's a superstar in the NBA, but they just don't have the shooting depth that Golden State really has with Porter, Gary Payton, obviously with Steph Curry. Klay Thompson's been extremely cold, but I mean, we all know that Klay Thompson, once he gets going from three, he's arguably the second best shooter right now in the modern era. So they just don't have the depth that Golden State has at 3-point position. So I do wonder if Boston can, if they're going to try to establish to really dominate from the mid range to the low post, because they have bigger guards, they have bigger forwards. We saw in game one how Al Horford was able to dominate. I mean, the reason why he was open so many times was because not only they just couldn't, not only did they, not respect his 3-point ability, even though his entire career he's been able to hit threes, but they know when he was in the low post, they couldn't stop him. He was too big, he was too physical. Even in game two, they had a little bit of a struggle with him down low. So they can't let Boston's guards and forwards dominate the low post, because then it's going to open up three, potential opportunities from the outside range for these Celtics players to hit. And again, with that hostile environment, I mean, home court in the NBA Finals, it's always been a way. It's always kind of been a huge advantage for any whether if it's the opposition or the home team. It's always been an advantage. You got to take advantage of it. And for me personally, I just think that overall wise, if the Warriors win game three, I think the series is over. I truly think the series is over, because you can't. Games 1 and 2 it was dominant. I mean, and that's why it was just so crazy for me to see Boston pull that off. And it's almost kind of like it was a fluke. Like you just couldn't believe that Golden State choked away 17 points, because when they've been up by at least 15 points this year, they've only lost twice in the regular season. That's just the regular season. That's an 82 game stretch. They did it against the Boston Celtics in game 1 of the finals. So if Golden State, I think, wins this game, I think the momentum shifts to their favor. I think it clearly kind of shows that even though Boston is the more talented team, they have the bigger forward, they have the more athletic forwards and guards. At the end of the day, Golden State's depth, their experience, their coaching, their coaching tactics, and their leadership, I think overall wise will prevail. So I think Golden State is the better team. Game 3 should be extremely interesting. It's going to be a hostile environment for sure. Boston fans are going to be riled up, but in my opinion, if Golden State takes it, I think it's their series. I still got Golden State winning in 6, but game 3 I think is going to be a very crucial game for the series.
For sure, yeah, it'll be important. I honestly have Golden State. I picked Golden State in 7 going in, but yeah, game 3 is pivotal, like you said. I think it's going to be important to see what Boston can do. Who's going to be able to step up. Game 1 was an Al Horford game. Obviously Jason Tatum wasn't able to, do his thing in terms of scoring wise, but he was able to feed guys like Al Horford. He was able to get Jaylen Brown his touches and, let him really, run the offense, things like that. So, and then on the flip side of that, we saw in game 2, Jordan Poole, who has had a tremendous season. He just continued on with what he's been doing. But that's really the beauty of Golden State. I remember their runs a few years ago. Their big their like mantra was strength in numbers, and same as today, because they have such a collection of guys. Like, to think, Jordan Poole had a great game, 17 points off the bench on Sunday. To think that, Andrew Wiggins, yeah, he was in double figures, but it wasn't his best night. He had a pretty strong showing in game one, but Jordan Poole can come off the bench and score for you. You got Andrew Wiggins who can do that for you. Like you mentioned, Klay Thompson hasn't even heated up yet. He's still a guy that we know at any moment in time he can pull up and let it fly, and he's an X factor really for this whole entire team. Offensively and defensively. I mean, even just thinking about the return of Gary Payton II too. I think that alone, the return of Gary Payton II, I think that addition alone might be the piece that puts Golden State over the top, just because I feel as though when it comes to basketball specifically, there's so many roles in a lot of other sports, but in a sport like basketball, where your point guard is clearly your superstar, but he's a guy that's able to run around and have a point forward like Draymond Green feed him. You got another guy who can play tremendously off the ball, and in Klay Thompson, and then obviously Wiggins and Jordan Poole, they'll get filled in from there. But when you have a guy like Gary Payton, who's, I mean, yes, he can score when he needs to. He can attack the lane when he needs to, but he's a guy who's strictly on the court to play hard and play defense and, try to lock up your best player. And, whether you have him on Tatum, whether you have him on Brown, whether you throw him on Marcus Smart for a little bit, whatever the case is, he's a guy that's going to literally be out there just trying to stop guys. And, when you have a guy that is not only is great enough to do that, with his length and strength and athleticism, but that actually has a clear defined role, whereas where Tatum is, he's a two-way guy. He's looked to be the guy that can give you 25, but he's trying to hold your best player to under 25 too. And obviously that's what Marcus Smart's main objective is as well. But, he's even involved a little bit more so outside of his defensive his defensive responsibilities as the point guard. So, I truly think the addition or the return of Gary Payton II really might be the move that, gets done for Golden State, because when he's in the game, I mean, it just goes to show, he was one of the young guys I forgot to mention, but, when you think obviously Dre, Clay, and Steph, and Looney and Iguodala, and now Wiggins has come along as well, but you think about a young core of Wiggins and Poole and Kuminga and Gary Payton, and as well as potentially Wiseman once he's healthy next year. I mean, the Warriors really just have to be just thankful for the position that they're at today.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And again, man, it's insane to watch, Steve Kerr. I mean, like you mentioned earlier, I mean, Steve Kerr, man, was with Chicago Bulls, played on the San Antonio Spurs, won some championships there, and now he's created his own dynasty with Golden State. And, you talk about the best organizations in not just in basketball, but in all the sports. I mean, this can range from like soccer. I mean, Real Madrid in June, they just won their fifth Champions League, like in the last 10 years, which is absolutely absurd. That's probably one of the hardest tournaments to ever win a title. But, you look at all the organizations. I mean, it starts with the top. It starts with ownership. It starts with management, who you can hire as far as the right coach, and who are the players, who are the players that can get in there. And again, they don't have to be the most talented guys, but from a leadership standpoint, from a chemistry standpoint, right? How can this team function, right? Can they function right? And when you look at what the Golden State Warriors have been doing, I mean, this is not the most talented Golden State team we've ever seen. I mean, Kevin, Nabil and D Brown, they were kind of talking about it with the whole Kevin Durant slander. I mean, Draymond Green saying that, Stephen Curry has always been the focal point. Maybe that is true or true or not, but there's always been some talk with Kevin Durant. But, Kevin Durant, Curry, Klay Thompson with Draymond Green, that was an extremely talented team. And you can make an argument that the 2016 team, when they broke the Chicago Bulls record, was still better than what the Warriors team was with Kevin Durant, Stephen Curry, Draymond Green, with Klay Thompson, because that team was so much deeper. Not just from a player standpoint, but they had some extremely good assistant coaches. Their management team and their structure everything was right. You can make an argument that I still would take that 16 team over any other team over the last 10 years, even though they did lose to the Cleveland Cavaliers in the NBA Finals. People kind of underestimate how good that Cavaliers team was with LeBron James and Kyrie Irving and J.R. Smith was still a really good six-man and a whole lot of other good players on that team. So it's just very impressive to see what the Warriors have been able to do over the last decade. They've become one of the greatest. I think the question is like, are they better than the San Antonio Spurs dynasty or the Chicago Bulls dynasty? Like, are they? I think they have. If they win this finals, getting their fourth, they're now going to be in the discussion to compete against the Spurs dynasty and the Chicago Bulls dynasty. Now, obviously, that Bulls dynasty in the 90s was insane. The Lakers dynasty in the 80s. I mean, you can say the Celtics dynasty a little bit in the 80s too. Obviously, no one's better than that Celtics dynasty back in the 50s and 60s with Bill Russell, and they literally had like 5 Hall of Fame players in the starting lineup. But they're going to enter the discussion now if they win this, and Steve Kerr to be a part of 3 of the greatest dynasties in modern basketball. Man, either he's the luckiest person, or he's just that good as a player, or as a / hybrid kind of coach. He's been incredible. So hats off to Golden State. Like I said, hopefully they can pull this one off. I'm rooting for Golden State in a way because Stephen Curry is one of my favorite players. But forget it. If Boston loses this series, they're still young. I mean,
yeah.
In my opinion, I don't even think this team is that different from when Jason Tatum was 19 years old when they lost to LeBron James and that Cavaliers team. It's not that different. They're still extremely young. Now, yes, Al Horford is 36, 37 years of age, and he's still a pretty good player. But I mean, everyone else going to next year is going to be back anyway for them. So they still get that unit for the next 2 to 3 years where they continue to try to get better, continue to try to find ways to improve their team. And so we'll see. But obviously, I think right now, from what we've seen from game 1 and game 2 and now going into game 3, it just seems like Golden State is just the better team. And Boston, if they can just, very similar to that Mavericks team, if they can just find some ways to steal games, if they can just find ways to steal games and try to learn how to put it all together, we can have something. But until then, I think my money is just on Golden State.
Yeah, for sure. I don't want to say this Boston team is playing with house money, because this isn't like it's hard to compare what finals matchup this series is like. Because I don't want to compare it to the 2012 matchup with the Heat and the Thunder, where clearly you had a Heat team that was primed, ready to go, ready to win. All prime superstar players with Bron and D Wade and Chris Bosh, versus KD and Russ and Harden, who were all under 23 years old. No, like that. This is not that. This is definitely not that. But like you said, this is a young team really getting its first taste of experience. I almost I hate to again go back outside of a sport. But again, I kind of compare it to like the Rams a few years ago, where, they lost in the Super Bowl to the Patriots, to, who were, again, same thing, a much more experienced team, a veteran laden team with Brady and Gronk and, Amendola and, and obviously Bill Belichick and the McCourty brothers and, all these vets. Whereas, that Rams team was, elite, but it was very young. They were up and coming. Guys were still trying to prove themselves and establish themselves in the league. Whereas this Boston team, I think they've made the right ascent. Obviously, conference finals in Tatum's rookie year. They take a little bit of a step back the next year. 2020, they get back to the conference finals against the Heat, and just fall short in the bubble. And then last year, tough way to go out last season as well. But, at the same time, too, for them, it was really just another roadblock and another stepping stone to get them to this point. I mean, people really, it's crazy to think about. People don't even understand. Like, Jason Tatum is literally 24 years old. Like, the fact that he's elevated his game to this level, and we all knew, we all watched him at Duke. We all watched him, as a rookie and, battling LeBron as a rookie in the NBA playoffs, and the fact he's scored over 26 points a game the last 2 seasons. But the fact that he's only 24 years old, the fact that Jaylen Brown as well. Jaylen Brown, I believe, is only 25 years old. I'm taking a look at that now. But just so all these young pieces, Marcus Smart is still a young player in his own right. Yeah, Jaylen Brown's 25. Marcus Smart, he might be the oldest of those guys, like of their core, their true core. He's only 28. He just turned 28 in March. So I mean, I guess he's closer to the back end of his career. But even a guy like Robert Williams, who is really like a big piece of their foundation now. He's only 24 years old as well. He'll turn 25 in October. So, I really truly believe that, just considering where the Celtics are right now, I don't want them to look at this as like a moral victory, because they have a legitimate chance to win this series. They're a legit team. They're one of the, I mean, to be completely honest, especially seeing how Ime Udoka, after the changes he made early or like around the New Year mark, and just seeing how well they've played, I don't really, it's hard for me, like as a NBA fan, I don't really have a true team. I'm a big LeBron fan. I would say like I like the Cavaliers. You know what I mean? There are certain teams I like, but I wouldn't say I'm necessarily a true fan of any team. But at the same time too, just knowing that this Boston team, they've been so strong the second half of the season. I've really wanted to see them get to this point. I thought like if it wasn't Brooklyn, I really thought this Boston team was the team, or Milwaukee. Those three were the ones where I was like, if anybody's gonna come out of the East, it's those three. I really wasn't I didn't think it was gonna be Philly and Embiid and Harden. I really like the Bulls, but their injuries really just piled up towards the end of the year. And, but like I said, man, like I really am excited to see this Boston team continue on. But, I think if there's any one specific adjustment, it might be something that has changed over, or that they've changed in recent years, or this year specifically even. And that might be, they may need to play Tatum at the 4, and stick with Horford at the 5, go with Jaylen Brown at the 3, and then decide whether they want to start Peyton Pritchard at point, and keep Marcus Smart at the 2, and have him in, or whatever the case is from there, whether they want to keep one of those guys coming off the bench, or keep Pritchard coming off the bench still, whether you bring in Grant Williams now, whatever the case is. So I really think that they've got to poke and prod a little bit with their lineup, but I truly do think putting Tatum at the 4 is something that that they really should strongly consider, because at that point, yes, he would have Draymond Green would be the primary defender on him, but at the same time too, there's going to be a mismatch somewhere, because whether it's Horford and Looney, I think Horford would win that matchup, and then Tatum and Draymond Green, they to an extent would cancel each other out. But then as you start getting down the line, Jaylen Brown and Andrew Wiggins, like I like the matchup for Boston there. Wiggins is a very good player, but I like that matchup for the Boston side of things. Marcus Smart, he'll most likely be matching up on Curry, but if you have him sticking on Clay right now, especially with the way Clay's been playing, that's something that could lean in Boston's favor as well. So, again, like I said, I really just think that the Celtics are at a point where they just got to tweak a couple things, but they are fortunate, because the fact that they were able to steal game 1 is a huge deal for them.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So before we get into our next sports topic, I want to look at these comments, man. Because obviously we got the same, usual suspects that are here. Shout out to Nabil, D Brown, Moody. Thank you guys so much for stopping by the channel. Pete Productions, I do see you in here. Thank you so much for stopping by the channel, man. And if you're coming from the Jan Sports YouTube channel, thank you guys so much for stopping by for Buffalo FamBase Sports, man. Because like I said, we are here every Tuesday, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6 o'clock Central Standard, 4 o'clock if you're over there on the West Coast, or wherever you're watching them from, man. We've actually had people from literally across seas. We had someone from Thailand not that long ago in the post comments in one of our channels that were kind of watching us. That was pretty cool to see too. So like I said, if you guys want to check out some of the best sports topics, we talk about high school sports, recruiting, college sports really soon. We're going to talk about that, because there's some exciting obviously events with college, NFL talk, of course, Buffalo Bills talk, basketball. We might even throw a little soccer in there. Who knows, man? But, if you want to check out the latest sports topics, man, you definitely want to click the subscribe button for Buffalo FamBase Sports if you are on our YouTube channel. Again, Facebook, Twitter, definitely follow us over there. We're going to be here Tuesday, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard, 6 o'clock Central Time, 4 o'clock if you're over there on the West Coast. Now, obviously, one of the biggest topics today was Aaron Donald today. Massive contract, $91 million extension, $63 million guaranteed. He's going to be paid $31.9 million per year on his contract. The highest paid non-quarterback in the National Football League. Obviously, the Rams value him so much. The contract is actually going to go through, I think, either around 2024 or 2025. Talk to me about Aaron Donald. Do you think he kind of deserved his contract? Do you think the LA kind of overpaid him a little bit? Please, because I definitely need to know this, because I think that Aaron Donald has opened up the market. I honestly think he's opened up the market for a lot of really big defensive players. Maybe that started with Von Miller when we kind of paid him that massive contract, but obviously if you look at the ins and outs of the contract, it's not that bad of a contract like everyone was making out to be. But this contract with Aaron Donald, where are the Rams getting this money from, man?
Yeah, I really don't. I don't understand where they're getting the money either. It's like they're playing with monopoly money at this point, man. Like, they're just making money up. But first and foremost, Aaron Donald deserves every single penny in this contract. I love to see it, especially as I was an offensive lineman, so I know how important defensive linemen are. Especially as a guy. See, like, this is what people really don't understand about Aaron Donald. Like, obviously, like, he's a defensive tackle, but he can literally line up at any spot on the defensive line, whether it's nose. You don't want to have him at nose too often, but like whether it's nose, one tech, shade 3, whether it's head up 4s, 5 technique as a defensive end. I mean, you can line him up in 40 fronts, 30 fronts. I mean, the guy is just unbelievable. And I mean, the contract to me is great because of, like you said, first of all, he's going to help a lot of other dudes get paid. There's going to be a lot of other defensive players who are just going to be commanding, tremendous deals. I think for the fact that we've got, I'm going to take a look at some of the free agents for 2023, but the fact that we've got, a guy, not playing the quarterback position, on the defensive side of the ball, that's going to be making, over $30 million a year is huge. That's a big deal. And if there's any player in football that deserves it, it's him. For the last, 5-6 years, everybody, and it's a general consensus. There's Mahomes, there's Josh Allen, there's there's Travis Kelce, there's there's been guys like Nick Bosa who have come along, TJ Watt, but in that span, just about every pundit, just about anybody who's a fan or someone who evaluates football agrees that Aaron Donald is that guy and is probably the best player in the league, and so for him to finally be getting this contract, first of all, shout out to the Rams for doing that, because if he didn't go on that media tour last week saying, hey, I'm at peace. I could retire today and be cool. He didn't do that for no reason. He knew, like, hey, like, you guys want me to come back, it's going to cost y'all something, absolutely. So I'm just glad that he was able to get the money. And, also too, it's exciting because, I think for him, especially, like, I really just want to be able to see, what he's going to add to his career. He's already established himself as one of the greatest ever. It'll be interesting to see because, the day that he retires, the LA Rams that we know in this era will be tremendously different. It was an adjustment for them to move on from Todd Gurley. We saw, how the new era of Matthew Stafford looked as well. So we've seen a couple different iterations of this Rams franchise, now that they're out in LA. But the day that AD retires, that's when it all changes. So, as a football fan, I am just honored to be able to, continue watching him play. But also too, I love to see him get that bag, it well-deserved. And just looking at the numbers of it, it just, it's fair. I mean, you could argue that he didn't get enough money. You know, he didn't even crack 100 million. He definitely is worth 100 million plus. So, but again, like I said, I'm just happy for him, and you know, just for you as well, Jerick. What are your thoughts on the deal?
Well, he deserves it, man. He deserves it. He deserves that paper, man. I mean, he should have got paid last year, but you know, obviously winning the Super Bowl, making the game-winning play, was just the seal. And I think people talk about defensive players not being that valuable, especially defensive tackles, because I mean, you look at the position that he's playing at right now. You don't expect those guys to get a lot of sacks. Normally, you expect edge rushers, outside pass rushers to definitely do it there. You know, obviously the Von Millers, just throwing out names like the Marcus Wares of the world. I mean, you look at those players, those guys on the outside, those are the guys that get paid, not the guys that are in the interior. The 1 technique, 3 tech guys, those guys are not going to get paid. But, you know, you look at the Allen Pages, the Mean Joe Greens, you look at the, you look at the Warren Sapps, the John Randalls of the world. I mean, these guys, man, I mean, it is rare to find guys like that at the defensive tackle position that can dominate and change a game. You know, JJ Watt, you know, he's played in a 43. Obviously, he was part of a 34. But, you know, obviously JJ Watt was probably one of the more premier guys that you can line up pretty much anywhere and that he can dominate. But Aaron Donald, I think, he's just on another level, man. I think that Aaron Donald is just one step above what JJ Watt was in his prime. A guy that can just be a complete game changer, a guy that demands double and triple teams. And even then, you can't really stop him, how quick he is off the ball. His body, I mean, you look at, he's 6'1", 300, he's like 6'1", 300 pounds, but he looks like he's 220 or 215. He's so lean. I'm like, dude, we have never, ever seen a player built like that at the defensive tackle position since the 70s, when those guys were 250, 240, 250, so it's just, Aaron Donald is a rare specimen, man. He is a generational talent. And pretty much since he's entered the league, he's either been to the Pro Bowl, All-Pro status, he's been in the Defensive Player of the Year consideration every single year that he's been in the league. He's been extremely reliable. I'm knocking on wood here. Hopefully he stays durable, but he's been one of the more durable players in the National Football League. And I think just winning a Super Bowl, I think, stamped his ticket to being one of the greatest. I mean, we already knew he was one of the greatest players of time, but of course we have the old heads saying that no, he's not better than John Randall. He's not better than Warren. He's not even in the conversation with Warren Sapp because he doesn't have that elusive championship. Well, now he does have a championship, and I think his name should be considered among players like Lawrence Taylor. Yes, I'm throwing his name with Lawrence Taylor because you look at his impact of the game at the defensive tackle position. Yes, exactly. Lawrence Taylor changed the game. He changed the game for everyone at that as a pass rusher, man. Because I mean. And it's funny how that position pretty much started, because it was pretty much Lawrence Taylor was supposed to be an inside linebacker, and he didn't know any of the plays, so he just decided to say, whatever, I'm just going to just go ahead and just get after the quarterback because I already know I'm more athletic than these guys. I'm just going to go ahead and get these guys. And ever since that North Carolina days, he just changed the position forever. And obviously, one of the most unblockable, one of the greatest game changers for football standpoint in our history. But Aaron Donald, man, I think you can make an argument he's just changed the way we look at the position today and how we look. I mean, just since being in the league in 2014, he's had more sacks than anybody since 2014. He's had more tackles for loss than anybody in the NFL. He's had more quarterback hurries, quarterback pressures, you name it. I mean, Aaron Donald is elite, and he's doing it at a position where it's not known for these guys. These guys are supposed to be known as guys that can stop the run, that can control the gaps. Not this. So, Aaron Donald deserves his money. And I think the Rams actually kind of had no choice, because if you didn't pay him, they were not going to be a Super Bowl contender. I think with Aaron Donald in there, you're automatically a Super Bowl contender because how we can change the game and how we can make players better. Look at Von Miller. Look at Leonard Floyd, how he was able to kind of turn his fortunes since Aaron Donald was there. It's just it's so important to pay up a premier player like that on your team, because that is the difference from becoming a Super Bowl contender and not becoming a Super Bowl contender. And again, you look at Bobby Wagner. They paid him a lot of money to try to affect plays. With Aaron Donald there, Bobby Wagner is still going to be an All-Pro player, and he's still going to keep that position. I don't know if Bobby Wagner can keep that level of play up with Aaron Donald being there. Bobby Wagner might be in the Defensive Player of the Year consideration. The big reason why is because of Aaron Donald. So, again, he got his money. You made a great point. You can make an argument he should have got at least $100 million, but he got the $91 million. He got the $63 million guarantee for the next 2 to 3 years. And it's just great to see him play because even at 31 years of age, he still has a lot left in the tank. He has shown no signs of slowing down. And I think by the end of his career, I think he's going to be in that consideration with possibly top 5, if not the best defensive player of all time, with right next to Lawrence Taylor.
100%. I mean, it's funny. Like I did a story about this with Fansided. No, was this Fansided? It might have been Pro Football Mania. I mean, man, like when you think about it, it's really Reggie White. Is like you said, LT. It's Dick Butkus. It's like that's the class he's in. He's earned that. I mean, this man has been a first team All-Pro, not second team. This is indicating you are one of the 2 best defensive tackles in the NFL. He's been first team All-Pro 7 consecutive years. Like that's just that you don't see runs of dominance like that. Even LeBron James in the NBA hasn't been first team All-NBA that many consecutive years in the last handful of years. You know what I mean? Like I know he's towards the end of his career, but still, like just to equate how dominant this man has been. He's truly become the prototype for the 3 technique, because it's like you mentioned with LT, where LT is the prototype for what an edge defender is. You know, he's an outside linebacker that stands up and rushes the passer. Like they literally created that position because of LT. Like Aaron Donald hasn't necessarily, because football's so far advanced. He's coming in 100 years into the game at this point, but he is truly the prototype for 3 technique tackles. Anytime you hear an undersized, athletic, strong defensive tackle coming in the league, oh man, he's like an Aaron Donald type. Like that's the standard he's created. And I just truly believe that, like you said, now that he's got his chip, he's not. We are in. I always think this is the most interesting thing with an athlete, because even for on the other side of the ball, Matthew Stafford, he's in this territory now too, where any doubts, any issues that people had about their career, those are all out the window now. We're getting bonus time now. We're getting bonus Aaron Donald. We're getting bonus Matthew Stafford, because Stafford now, whether he makes the Hall of Fame or not, we'll see. I personally think he will, especially with all the numbers he's put up. And seeing now that he'll probably play in LA for the ending of his career, which is a great situation for him. He's probably going to end up in the Hall of Fame, but like he's a Super Bowl champion now. You can't tell him nothing. You can't tell AD nothing now either. You can't tell me he's not, one of the greatest to ever do it now. And to go back to a point we talked a little bit about earlier, in terms of, other guys getting paid. I mean, just looking at some of the free agents for 2023, some names that stand out specifically are, Derwin James, Bradley Chubb will be a free agent, Minkah Fitzpatrick, so Tremaine Edmonds. So, some guys that may be able to, they're definitely not getting Aaron Donald money, definitely not. But they'll be able to come into negotiations now with a little bit more to work with, saying, hey, listen, we know we're not AD. None of us are claiming to be. But he's set a new bar for us, and he's helping us get paid. So, especially as some of those guys are former All-Pros, former Pro Bowlers, they can use that in negotiations now. So, props to AD, props to the Rams, and Les Snead. And it's funny you mentioned that too, about that they had to do this. Les Snead said it today. He said, the ball was really in AD's court. We just had to acquiesce to that, essentially. So I'm glad that they did. And, it'll be a tough one opening night in LA now with 99 under lining up over the center.
Obviously, absolutely, man. And like I said before we hop into our next sports topic, man, Aaron Donald, I think, in my opinion, is the best defensive player. I grew up watching Troy Polamalu, Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, of course, the great Ed Reed. I think he's the best safety of all time.
Yeah.
DeMarcus Ware, Elvis Dumerville, so many great defensive players. Obviously, our own, Aaron Schobel, I think is, Mario Williams, so many great defensive players. But Aaron Donald, that's the best dude I've ever seen play. I mean, that dude has flashed before my eyes every single time. And you look at, since he's been, not Zach Martin, but the only player that's on course to having the type of career that Aaron Donald has had from just different positions, but very similar as Quentin Nelson. Since Quentin Nelson's been in the league, he's been all pro since he's been in the league.
Yeah.
Aaron Donald, he's since Aaron Donald's been in the league, he made the Pro Bowl his rookie year. He didn't make it to any All Pro teams because that's when Mario Williams and Kyle Williams, those guys made All Pro status at defensive tackles, which I still don't understand how in the absolute heck did we not make the playoffs when we had 3 All Pro players on one defensive line. I just
led the league in sacks.
I would never understand how we had 3 All Pro players and never made it to there. But besides his rookie year in 2014, he's been an All Pro every single year ever since that rookie season. And even then, you can make an argument he should have been in there since he was third, and he was third when it came to defensive tackles, right next to Fletcher Cox and Marcel Darius from leading the league in sacks. He had 9.5 his rookie season. So Aaron Donald, great to see him get paid. Absolutely, incredible. And we'll see, man. First game of the year will be Buffalo Bills versus Rams. So in a way, I one side of me was saying, Aaron Donald, glad you got paid, but the other side of me was saying, please just retire so I don't have to deal with you during that opening game and hopefully hopefully not hurt my quarterback Josh Allen. But now speaking of the Buffalo Bills, we're gonna hop into the next topic because this just kind of happened not that long ago. But we also hired our new assistant general manager, Brian Gaines. Gaines, I believe, was the former Houston Texans general manager before he moved on to the Buffalo Bills. Khari, you used to intern with the Buffalo Bills. What are your thoughts with them getting Brian Gaines, moving him up at the assistant general manager position?
First and foremost, I think it's always great to see guys who are former players, making their way up, into organizations just because they understand things a little bit differently, So Brian Gaines, he played for the Jets briefly, played for the Giants briefly, played for the Chiefs briefly as well. But he's really worked his way up. He started out as a scout with the New York Jets and then became an assistant director of pro scouting with the Cowboys before he went to the Dolphins with their player personnel staff. And he eventually took over as the director there, was assistant GM there as well. And again, was, with the Texans at one point, during 2 different stints. So yeah, I think, first of all, he's been around some pretty successful teams. The 07 Cowboys, those 02 Jets and 04 Jets, both made the playoffs. He was in Houston when they were really in the middle of, kind of them emerging themselves in the AFC South and, winning division titles under Bill O'Brien and everything like that. And, for him also too, he's coming back to Buffalo. He's not coming back to Buffalo, but he's really established himself as a Buffalo guy because he was actually the VP of player personnel in 2017 during Coach McDermott and Brandon Beane's first year at the helm. So, it's great to see that, someone that is familiar with the building, familiar with the roster, familiar with the staff is just elevating up. I think the Bills have become such a strong enough organization where, they're bringing guys in, they're bringing people from the outside in, obviously Joe Brady just got brought in as OC and, some other people on staff. But to think that, someone who is getting promoted up in the personnel department, just from within, but he's got his credentials and he's been around successful winning football. So I'm really just interested to see how him and Brandon Beane work together. Clearly they enjoy working together because I don't think Beane would have picked him to be his top assistant if that was not the case. But I think it's again, I'm always a big proponent of promoting from within, especially if you've established yourself as a strong, connected, winning organization. And that's what, if I was telling 12-year-old me this, he would probably be like, Bills winning organization. But, that's what the Bills have developed into. They're one of the powerhouse teams in all of the league. There's no more betting money on any NFL team to win the Super Bowl this year than the Buffalo Bills. So, the proof is really in the pudding. I'm really excited to see what happens. The Bills have already put together a tremendous roster, and, Brian Gaines has obviously been a part of that. Now that he's been on staff since 2019. So, Jerick, for you, just thoughts on the move and Brian Gaines' promotion.
Well, first of all, it's good to see Brian Gaines at least get in this position because ever since he kind of got left the Houston Texans there. For the most part, it's just good to see him just back in this position because who knows, in 2-3 years he can potentially get a new general manager job. I mean, he's looking him up. He's got a lot of really, really good sayers, man. A lot of people really like him across the NFL. I mean, you said it, man, former player in this league. You look at he's worked his way up from the ground up all the way. He was at the top at some point, and now you look at where he's at with the Buffalo Bills and a great structure, great organization, and he's had a lot of great things to say about the Bills organization, how they've kind of helped him develop. As not just a guy that can evaluate players and evaluate talent, but how they look at the NFL, how to try to build a great organization, great structure. Because he's been here since 2017, right? So he's seen it. I mean, he's seen how we worked our way up from being a kind of the bottom to kind of then being a mediocre organization to now being one of the top dogs, one of the top 5 organizations in the league. I mean, Brandon Beane won Best GM of the Year. And he won it for good reason. I mean, for what we've seen with Josh Allen and Tremaine Edmonds and Ed Oliver, and from our coaching staff with Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier. And you look at the most important thing is that the Bills hired within their organization. I mean, you look at the Buffalo Bills, they could have went out and they could have got an offensive coordinator. I mean, Joe Brady, who they got from Carolina, they could have easily made him in the offensive coordinator. I mean, Joe Brady's had even though he's still extremely young, obviously there's a lot of momentum from that LSU year back in 2019, where even he wasn't. Steve Ensminger was the offensive coordinator, but Joe Brady was involved because he was the passing game coordinator over there. But he was heavily involved in that LSU scheme to making Joe Brady an Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. So he still has a lot of momentum, and we could have hired him, but we decided to try to, we let go of Brian. Well, we didn't let go of Brian Daboll. Brian Daboll decided to go to the Giants. We need a guy that learned a lot from him, that knows what it takes to kind of build this offense up. And obviously we want to try to stay with what works for us. And that's getting a guy like Ken Dorsey, who has been the quarterback coach, who's been around for a very long time since the beginning with Brian Daboll. And we kind of worked him up. So it's great to see us hiring within our organization, not really kind of getting, it'll be cool if we would have got someone else, but I think the right thing to do was to hire within the organization, get someone that knows the structure, knows what it takes, knows what your philosophy is. And I think that's a guy like Brian Gaines. And it's one of these situations where, you look at Shoney where he departed and went to the Giants. I think that for the most part, this could be a very similar situation where I think he's going to be a top dog. He's going to be a huge part of this process for Buffalo in the next 2 to 3 years, or how long he's going to stay here before eventually you're going to have a team knocking on the door wanting him, and he comes there and he's fixing up another organization. And so it's just great. I think this is great for both sides, for Sean, for Brandon Beane, for Brian Gaines. And I think this is going to be great for his reputation being part of a great, strong organization, because, again, his name has already been nothing but positive for a lot of NFL organizations for who he's worked with, nothing but positive, no negatives. It's just all about, can he kind of build himself up again so he can be trusted to be in that GM role again, which I think he'll have. So I think this was a great deal for Brian Gaines, and I'm excited to see what he can do working with Brandon Beane in this Bills organization once again.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. I mean, in his time in Houston, he helped them win division titles in, I believe it was 4 of the 5 years he was there. So yeah. That goes without saying. He helped the Miami Dolphins win a division title when he was down in South Beach. He helped the Jets win a couple of division titles. The guy knows what he's doing. He's got a lot of things on his resume that show like he's ready for this role. And it's very unique to see a guy who, showed to be a good GM. I know the Texans never won a championship, but as an expansion franchise, they became a perennial division champion. They won the division title 4 times in a 5-year span. That's a big deal. And, he showed to be an effective GM, but you rarely see a guy who showed to be a good GM take on a role, that's a little bit outside of, it was, just being more of a consultant as an advisor to player personnel, but to step back into the GM assistantship role is that's rare. But again, that's what happens when you have a successful, thriving organization like the Bills. He obviously has been a part of seeing the turnaround that this team has made in the last really half decade. And also too, I again, like, talking about promoting within, I was a huge fan. I was pounding the table. I couldn't have pounded the table harder for Ken Dorsey to be promoted as OC. It made too much sense. Josh Allen wanted him to be the guy. The guys know him and like him a lot. So why not? I mean, same here. It just seems like it's a great fit. And hopefully it's able to get the Bills over the hump now that he's elevated up in a little bit more of a hands-on role, working alongside Brandon Beane.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And before we get onto our next sports topic, like I said, man, thanks for everyone coming from the Gen Sports channel or coming from, again, Twitter, our Facebook channels. Thank you guys so much for stopping by. And again, if you guys want to follow us, man, what you guys should definitely follow us. We talk about the latest sports topics like we're doing today. We talk finals, we talk Bills, of course, but we talk about everything, NFL sports, everything. So if you guys love that type of sort of content, make sure to subscribe to Buffalo Fan Base. And also make sure to hit the like button, man. Definitely helps us out with the YouTube algorithm because the algorithm just continues to just switch up and act up. I don't know what YouTube is doing. However, we are on this platform and it is really, really good for us, including, obviously with Facebook and Twitter now, they're going to add an algorithm. It's good for, the like button to be smashed as much as possible because it helps both us and not just us, but a lot of the other content creators that are on the Buffalo Fanbase YouTube channel and Twitter and Facebook and whatever social media outlet we could definitely look out there. So now we're going to get into our last sports topic, and that's Rookie of the Year candidates, because obviously mini camp is here. Training camp is literally going to be next month, and preseason, we're already around the corner for the NFL football season. So we got to talk about these rookies. Obviously we heard some news with Treylon Burks. Obviously he's been not the greatest start in the world. Couldn't really participate because of asthma. So hopefully he continues to do well. But, Khari, man, who are your Rookie of the Year candidates? Which rookies you think can show up and prove and to see if they can prove us, either prove us right, prove us wrong? Who do you have as your Rookie of the Year candidates?
For sure. Yeah, I'll give you a couple of names that really stand out to me. In terms of offensive Rookie of the Year, there's a lot of different ways we could go with this. I think it's going to be tough for a quarterback, I think. Kenny Pickett, he's in a quarterback battle with Mitchell Trubisky, so we don't even know if he's going to be the guy on the field. I don't see Malik Willis playing a ton. Maybe we get Matt Corral, to steal Sam Darnold's job at some point. But all of those are very just iffy, and I don't really see any of those guys playing the full season. But one name that really stands out to me, specifically on the offensive side of the ball, is Chris Olave. I'm a huge Ohio State fan, so I've been a fan of Olave since RIP, since Dwayne Haskins was throwing him the rock. But I think for a few reasons Olave is a good fit because, first of all, he's going into one of the better offensive situations in football. Obviously there's no Sean Payton, because with him stepping down and everything, and no Drew Brees, but Jameis Winston is still an effective quarterback, and he played his best ball last year before the injury. And I also think the fact that he's got a true defined role. He's going to be probably the top outside threat in that offense. You've got Jarvis Landry now, you've got Michael Thomas now as well. So I think he's a guy that really is a name that I think could get it. But I think, one of the guys that, we know specifically as a guy here in Buffalo, I really think James Cook is a name to watch. You got to look at it like this. James Cook, again, has a very true defined role coming into the Bills offense. He's already, he hasn't even played it down yet. And I truly believe he's the best receiving threat on the Bills in the Bills backfield, and that's not a slight at Motor. That's not a slight at Zach Moss. That's not a slight at Duke Johnson, even, who's a really good receiver. I just think, James Cook with the ball in his hands can get a lot done. I also believe too, just the fact that, he's going to play on a team that is most likely going to be winning a lot of games. He's going to have a lot of visibility. He's going to be, I told people this a lot even before the draft, like James Cook is like a baby Alvin Kamara where, maybe he's not, rushing for 1,000 yards, but, he'll probably have a lot of stat lines where he's, rushing for 50, 60 yards, but he also has 40, 50 receiving yards too. He might get in the end zone as well. And, You add that all up by the end of the season, he may not, like I said, he may not rush for 1,000 yards, but I could easily see him getting over 1,000 yards from scrimmage or dancing around that, even in a committee, and getting a lot of touches in the red zone or getting to the end zone a lot in general. So those are two names that kind of stand out to me there. In terms of defensive players, I think one name that really just right away just stands out looking at the rookie class again is Kyle Hamilton, man. Like, I mean, how many times have we seen, and it's funny because going back to the Aaron Donald discussion that we had, I thought about the same thing you said in terms of like, man, like, is he really like the best defensive player I've ever seen? I think he's probably the best defensive lineman I've ever seen. I thought Ray Lewis was the best linebacker I've ever seen. Ed Reed was by far the best DB I had ever seen. But looking at Kyle Hamilton, he's easily one of the best. He's easily like top 5 college prospects I've ever seen. I know his 40 time wasn't great. I know, he's a bigger guy and, that might not lend him to be the quickest of foot at times with things. But, I mean, outside of those nitpicky things, I mean, the guy brings it all. He hits. He covers well for a guy that big. He can play in the slot. He can play at free safety. You could play him at strong. You could play him at linebacker. Like, the guy does it all. I mean, and there are some picks that just make way too much sense. Like, Kyle Hamilton was put on earth to be a Baltimore Raven. Like, he just fits the culture there. He's got the attitude for that franchise. So he's a name that I really think could shine down in Baltimore. But another dark horse name I wanted to mention is Devin Lloyd. I think Devin Lloyd is a very underrated prospect. I personally think he was the best linebacker in the class. And he's a guy that, the thing I like about him now, he's going to be playing in Jacksonville this year for those of you guys out there who may not have known. But I think the thing with him is, one, he's on a team that's going to be bad. You play linebacker. So he's going to be able to run up the stats. I think that helps him. But also, too, he's like a Micah Parsons where he can play off the edge a little bit. He can pass rush. He's good in coverage. So if he piles up a couple of picks, gets some fumble recoveries, forces some turnovers, gets some sacks, I think he's a guy that could really pick up some steam. And like I said, he's going to have a lot of numbers. Jacksonville Jaguars defense is going to be on the field a lot, I'm sure. So I just think that'll help him a little bit. So just some names that I thought of. And one other is Jermaine Johnson from the New York Jets. He was my favorite pass rusher this year, even with Thibodeau and Aiden Hutchinson doing their thing. So, it'll be interesting to see what he does in Gotham. So, Jerick, for yourself, who are some of the Rookie of the Year candidates you're expecting?
Well, I think the first one for the offensive side of the ball, I think is going to be Christian Watson. And I think because I think Aaron Rodgers is going to do everything in his power to try to develop a number one receiving prospect, because if you look at some of his weapons, I mean, they're gone. I mean, all 3 of his top weapons are gone. Yes, he does have his tight end coming back, but besides that, I mean, he doesn't really have a lot of strong candidates, a lot of strong options. And even though the Packers have I think they're going to have a great defense, which another defensive player to your candidate, I think Devontae Wyatt paired up with Kenny Clark. And, obviously with a lot of those guys coming off the edge, I think it's going to be, with Rashawn Gary, it's going to be an absolute feast with Devontae Wyatt going to be there. And obviously Quay Walker, you can make an argument, you can put his name in there. But for me, I think Christian Watson, I think is going to be the number one guy, because as far as talent goes, he's the most talented receiver Aaron Rodgers has ever had. And we're talking about names like Jordy Nelson, Greg Jennings, Donald Driver. Obviously, you got to throw in Devontae Adams' name in the conversation, Randall Cobb. But if you just talk about talent as a prospect, that's the best prospect that Green Bay has ever had since, you got to go all the way back to the 90s. Since they've had a receiving prospect like Christian Watson. So I think Rodgers would do everything in his power to try to develop a number one option. And I think worst case scenario, Watson's going to have at least like 700 receiving yards. Maybe putting up those those Marcus Scantling numbers, which is not bad for him. But I look at his speed, how he can run those vertical routes, those go routes. I think he does need to develop his route tree a little bit more often. But I think Rodgers, working with him, which we've already seen that Rodgers is literally he's working his tail off with Watson in Green Bay anyway during these OTAs. I just think he's going to be one of the Rookie of the Year candidates, and I think he's primed to have a big year. I think another name that I think is Trent McDuffie, and a big reason why is not because he's going to be playing at outside corner. They actually got him as a nickelback At least looking at the depth chart so far, they got him in the slot. So McDuffie's 5'10", he's 200 pounds, so he's a big nickel corner. But I've always said that if he got drafted to Buffalo, he'll do really good here as an outside guy. But where he'll do his most, where he'll make his money is in the slot. He'll make his money in the slot because of his natural instincts. He can play zone coverage. He can play man. He can pretty much cover. He's had experience covering big receiving prospects, and he's actually done better against bigger receivers than quicker guys in the slot. So I think he's going to do a lot. I think he's going to do good with Kansas City. Obviously with Ward being there in Kansas City, controlling the outside, that's going to be big. But with him at the nickel, I think Trey McDuffie, very similar to what Asante Samuel Jr. was his rookie season with the LA Chargers. I think it could be a very similar season with McDuffie. I think he's primed to have another big year. Another name looking at this list that I kind of got here. Again, I just talked about Devontae Wyatt, James Cook being a receiving back with Josh Allen. We all know in second and third down situations where you can line him up in the slot. I think occasionally he'll get maybe around 5 to 6 handoffs. Buffalo, they're not really known for running the football hardcore, but he's going to be extremely involved in the passing game, where I think that you can't ignore what James Cook is going to do. So I think his role is going to help propel him to be in that conversation for Rookie of the Year. Kyle Hamilton, like you said before, got him on the list. Pair it up with Marcus Williams, Marcus Peters, Marlon Humphrey coming off of an ACL. I mean, that's just incredible. I mean, you're talking one of the better safety units in the National Football League. And then obviously with their defensive line unit and their linebacking unit. I mean, the only weakness that Baltimore has is maybe their inside linebackers. I mean, their outside guys with Patrick Queen being there. But they're strong. They're so strong up front. They're strong in the back end. And with Kyle Hamilton, you talk about just natural instincts to play the position. We've had some really good players, but just players that they were just born to play the position. They were born to just go to an organization like Baltimore, like you mentioned. That's Kyle Hamilton, a guy that, yes, 4'6", 40. We understand it might be a little slow, even though again he's 6'3", 220 pounds. So what do you expect? I mean, what do you expect to run a 4'4"? I mean,
exactly.
That's a big dude,
right?
It's incredible. And you look at his tape. I mean, he's one of the most rangy prospects we've ever seen. That's a dude that can cover literally sideline to sideline. I mean, we've already seen it on his tape, and it's hard to say that he can't do it when we've already seen it before on the tape. So Kyle Hamilton, I think, is going to be poised to be in that position. I think you mentioned earlier with Jermaine Johnson where he can take that role. Evan Neal, I think at tackle with Andrew Thomas, I think is going to be big. Now, obviously, I think Neal, he's had so much experience at Alabama, whether if he's playing at guard. He was an all-SEC first team, all-SEC guy, and a second team All-American at guard. And you're talking about a dude that was 370 pounds coming out of IMG Academy, where his natural position was at left tackle. So he's pretty much been all SEC All-American his 3 years, where he played at left guard, left tackle, right tackle, and then at left tackle. So I think they got him at right tackle right now, and Andrew Thomas is going to be playing at left tackle. But I think the most important thing is protecting Daniel Jones or whoever the quarterback is going to be for the future. I think if Evan Neal can stay upright, if he can stay healthy, knocking on wood, I think that Evan Neal is going to be one of the better prospects and a guy that you just can't ignore there. And then also too, Nakobe Dean. I got Nakobe. I think Nakobe Dean is going to look for revenge. I think he is going to be extremely motivated. I think he's going to try to definitely prove a lot of doubters wrong because of his size. Again, he had an injury with his pec, but for the most part, I mean, Nakobe Dean. I don't know what his 40 was. Some people say he ran a 4.8. Some people say he ran a 4.9. Some people ran around like a 4.5. I don't know what his 40 is. All I know is that on his tape, when he's running sideline to sideline, when he's chasing dudes down, that's one of the quickest players I think I've ever seen in college, maybe since Roquan Smith. Obviously Georgia has those athletic dogs. I mean, there's a reason why Nakobe Dean was starting instead of Quay Walker or Channing Tindall. There's a reason why he was that man. He was the alpha of that defense. And now you're playing with a great defensive line with Fletcher Cox. With Fletcher Cox, obviously you got to add Jordan Davis into that potential lineup. Their linebacking unit should be straight, but Nakobe Dean, I think, is going to be a day one impact player. I think he's going to be a day one impact starter, and I think he's going to prove a lot of dudes wrong at that outside linebacking position. There's some things he needs to clean up as far as learning how to try to get through those block sheds, learning how to take on blockers instead of trying to running around them. He needs to try to learn how to stand his ground, hold his ground there, and I think that's obviously was the concern because he just doesn't have the length. But I mean, he's an outside linebacker. I mean, he's a weak side guy. A guy that you want sideline to sideline, arguably the best coverage linebacker out of any other players in this current draft class, which I was just shocked that he was a third-round pick because you look at today's NFL game and the passing attack where coverage linebackers, they mean way more than your prototypical run stuffing guy like a Chanel type of player there. So I was just shocked. I mean, Quay Walker, I love Quay Walker, but Quay Walker, he does not have the coverage skills. He doesn't have the natural instincts to play at the linebacking position like Nakobe Dean has. It's just like we got to stop looking at the physical intangibles and looking at the 40s and just look at the tape. And I think Nakobe Dean's going to prove a lot of people wrong. So those are my rookie of the year candidates, man. And if you got some extra names you want to kind of prove, or if you got some other things we want to talk about, we can definitely do that real quick.
Yeah, for sure. No, those are some great names, and I'm glad you brought up Evan Neal. Again, as a former offensive lineman, like obviously I don't expect him to win Rookie of the Year, but I think he might end up being the most important pick of this draft because the Giants have just struggled mightily with offensive linemen in the Dave Gettleman era, and now that Dave Gettleman is retired, but I mean, even obviously Daniel Jones, has had his ups and downs, like 100%, but like it also hasn't helped that he's had one of the worst offensive lines in football too. So, that move is huge. And, like you said, with Nakobe Dean, it'll be interesting to see. I really do hope though that the injury doesn't end up coming back to haunt him. Cause I've torn my pec before and I know how, it's just a long I mean, thankfully he didn't have to get surgery, or, the Eagles were okay with him not getting surgery, but, I just hope it's not something that lingers throughout the season, or that he eventually will have to get surgery on, or, maybe he'll play in a harness or in a brace or whatever the case is. One other name that I wanted to note though is Daxton Hill. I thought, it's hard for me to shout a guy out for, that's a Michigan guy, but, he's a phenomenal talent. I personally thought he was the best nickel corner in this class, and that's, a guy that's going to probably be playing safety in the NFL. But he's got a unique role that he'll be bringing to the Cincinnati Bengals, who have two legitimate starting safeties already in Jesse Bates and Von Bell. So he's going to come in and just be a chess piece, I think, for them and their secondary. And Lou Anarumo, I believe is his name, the defensive coordinator for the Bengals. He really became a shining star throughout the playoffs. He really put himself on the map with the run to the Super Bowl. So, I think it'll be interesting to see how he is deployed in that unit. And then one other name as well, or two other names. Again, I got to shout out the linemen. Talking about the Ravens again, for them to get Tyler Linderbaum at 25, I mean, just
that's a steal.
A steal.
My God, that was a steal.
A steal. Like, to get the best safety or the best center, you get the best safety in the class at 14 overall, and then you get the best center in the class at 25 overall. I mean, some of these teams are playing checkers, some of these teams are playing chess, and I definitely think the Ravens are playing chess. And another team I wanted to note and shout out was the Chargers for picking Zion Johnson as well, because I think he's going to be really effective player, plug and play guy, could start for 10 years protecting Justin Herbert, and you got to protect that investment, especially before his big deal comes along, presumably in 2023. So,
yeah. And a couple names I can just add on to this. I think Perron Winfrey from Oklahoma. I'm a big Perron Winfrey fan from Oklahoma. He's the best, I think, interior pass rusher out of all the guys. And this was a weak interior pass rushing class. But I think with Perron Winfrey and the role that he's had, and the role he's going to be playing in Cleveland, he's going to be playing as a third down, maybe second down occasionally, but he's going to be a third down. He's going to be a three rush guy. I mean, that's a guy that you're going to use on third downs and pass rushing situations. And that's a guy that's going to be an extremely, really huge disruptor for Cleveland. So I love Perron Winfrey there for Cleveland. Cameron Taylor-Britt, I think is a guy could start. I mean, if there's any of these guys that are deep horse guys that are maybe second, third round, fourth round guys that can start, I think Cam Taylor-Britt has a great chance, because I just don't think Eli Apple is a veteran, but I just don't think he's that dude. He's struggled. I mean, he talks a lot. He's a decent player. Obviously, the former Ohio State guy, but he's not really performed the best. And I think that Cam Taylor-Britt has a great opportunity, especially with the skill set he's bringing from Nebraska, to potentially take that job and at least be the number two guy, for the Cincinnati Bengals. And it's not the Bengals outside corner. It's not like it's a huge weakness for them, because obviously they have two great safeties backing them up there. And then obviously with their pass rush, with Trey Hendrickson leading the charge. I mean, these guys, Trey Hendrickson and BJ Hill leading the charge, these guys were absolute monsters there. But it would be great to have an established number 2 guy, because you saw Eli Apple really struggle a lot in the wild card game and the Super Bowl game, including the divisional game. He struggled all 3 of those games. So to have an established number 2 guy, I think will be good. And I think Taylor Britt has a great chance of definitely taking the starting position, man. But anyway, guys, that is it for our show today, man. Like I said, thanks everyone for stopping by the channel, Pete Productions. Jordan Francis, man, from the Gen Sports channel. Thanks so much for stopping by. D Brown, again, Pete Productions, my boy Moody. Thank you guys so much for stopping by the channel. And like I said, guys, sports talk, latest sports conversations, whether it's the finals, we got NFL talk, mini camp, OTAs, training camp. That's literally on the way. Obviously, preseason is coming around the corner. We cannot wait to talk with you guys about that. And we're not going to forget about college. I mean, trust me, we got college sports coming pretty soon, high school recruiting, all that jazz. We will cover here on FamBase Sports. So if you guys want to check us out, Tuesdays, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can check us out on Facebook, on Twitter, including our YouTube channel on FamBase Sports there. So anyway, guys, thank you guys so much for stopping by. Also, make sure to hit the like button. Helps out with the YouTube algorithm and pretty much all the algorithms. So on Facebook, Twitter, if you guys can hit the like button, it would mean the world to us. Obviously, again, the algorithm will help us out. It will get more people involved, and they can be a part of this community. And it would not just help us out, but other content creators that are part of the FamBase Sports community. So obviously, we got Justice coming on at 9 o'clock. So make sure to check him out. And yeah, that's it for us. So anyway, guys, FamBase Sports with Gen Sports, aka Jerick and Khari Demos. We'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.
Likes, subscribe, share, retweet,
Please.
all that.
Absolutely, man. We'll catch you later, man.
Alrighty.